Reclaiming Power and Place, the final report of the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls, is a result of an inquiry into the phenomenal rates of violence that occur against Indigenous women, girls, two-spirit, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transsexual, questioning, queer, intersex, and asexual peoples in myriad ways in Canada. The commissioners of this inquiry identify this violence as genocide and make 231 recommendations that, when enacted, will bring this violence to an end. Framed as calls for justice, these recommendations are not optional, but rather are legal imperatives that arise from the violation of international and domestic human and Indigenous rights laws. Since its release on June 4, 2019, the Commissioners, Indigenous peoples, and our allies have called upon Canada to implement the calls for justice in the face of inaction. This compels the question, what has been enacted and what has not? And what can we do about this? Wanabojo Kinagwea, Makwa Nadodam, Baktin and Donjaba, Minawa, Ubishkakam and Donjaba. Waaseyaa'sin, Christine C., Indigenous. Hello everybody, I'm Bear Clan from Laxville First Nation and Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario. My name is waaseyaa'sin, Christine C. I'm a mother, a poet, and assistant professor in gender studies at the University of Victoria, here in Lekwungen and Wasanich territories. My work is in the area of Indigenous gender studies. This class is Gender 203, Indigenous Women in Canada. It teaches students about Indigenous women through two lenses. This assignment is a group project arising from the content regarding Canada's relationship with Indigenous women. That content being the inquiry report into missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls and 2S LGBTQIA peoples. It addresses the lack of attention and resources provided to implementing the calls for justice. Specifically, student groups are assigned select calls for justice and produce short videos calling attention to them. This was the first year I assigned this project. I was moved beyond belief to witness the students give it their all, their hearts, their intelligence, their care, and their commitment.
Hello.
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 Hello, everyone. We are students taking Indigenous Women in Canada, a gender studies course at the University of Victoria, which stands on the traditional territory of the Lekwungen, Esquimalt, and Wasanich peoples.
We call upon all Canadians to denounce and speak out against violence against Indigenous women, girls, 2S LGBTQIA people.
What is violence? Violence against Indigenous women and girls is historical and ongoing. We need to understand that violence comes in many forms and can look different depending on one experience to the next.
Indigenous women, girls, and 2S LGBTQIA people are holders of inherent rights to culture, health, security, and justice.
All governments must support and resource community-based supports and solutions designed to improve social and economic security.
We call upon all governments to support the establishment and long-term sustainable funding of Indigenous-led low-barrier shelters, safe spaces, transition homes, second-stage housing, and services.
These are challenging conversations to have, and when engaging in them, we must avoid pushing settler perspectives and processes onto Indigenous communities. Instead, we must center the needs, experiences, and wisdom of Indigenous voices.
The mission of the calls to justice for all Canadians is to acknowledge and combat violence. As well, they are made to encourage every Canadian and their government to consider how they can give life to these calls.
Help hold all governments accountable to act on the calls for justice and to implement them according to all the important principles that we set out.
It is important that institutions and organizations alongside the Canadian government put in the effort to enforce these securities, but we as individuals also have a part to play.
All calls to justice are aimed at ending genocide, tackling root causes of violence, and improving quality of life for Indigenous women, girls, and 2S LGBTQIA people. This is the only way forward. Thank you.
Students learned so much from this group video assignment. They learned about the power of embarking in relationship building in an online academic environment during a pandemic, and the significance of personal care when engaging in anti-violence work. They also learned that their academic work can be meaningful not just for grades, but to their families, to a cause, a movement, or a public, and most importantly, to themselves.